Well, good morning, good morning, good morning. How are you, Houston? This is Oscar Hines. Welcome to the Morning Edge here on the Edge Radio TV network. This is Dearly Disenfranchised with our awesome and wonderful host, Miss Nicole Gray, Esquire. How are you?
Good morning. I am doing absolutely wonderful this morning.
Oh.
It's a glorious Monday.
Oh, well, I love it when that happens. Fabulous weekend. Everything go well.
Yes, had a time to relax. I turned 42 last Thursday.
What?
Yeah.
Happy birthday.
And thank you. And I have a granddaughter that lives with me. And so I got a break from her and
Yes.
we got to go to the beach. So
Oh, that's
fantastic
awesome.
weekend.
That is
What about
awesome. Oh, I was very physically active. I decided to tackle my garage and, that wasn't pretty. It's pretty now, but it wasn't pretty.
I think everyone could take a little sigh on that when we know what it is.
we all been there and done that, right? So, but it's always just like cleaning your closet. It's a cleansing process. Now, you have been quite busy. Mm-hmm. For those just joining us, I want to share with you, Nicole Gray, an attorney, is also very engaged in the political space, specifically as it pertains to those who have been disenfranchised, separated in many respects from the political process. Now, this past week, Nicole, we had arguably the most important event up until now for the Democratic Party.
That's right. It was the ramp up of election season, the official kickoff, because we had the Democratic National Convention last week. And this week we've got the Republican National Convention. So it's the rally of the bases to get to the finish line in November, get people energized into the polls to support their candidates.
Yes.
So it's the kickoff.
Yes.
It's what, it's what most of the party's money
is going toward. This is it. But this was it in a virtual space.
It was.
That was very different. When you have John Legend and, performers like that.
That's right. And they made it happen. The times are so different. We've got to accommodate the CDC recommendations and local rules. And so, the virtual thing we're kind of getting used to because many people are working from home, having Zoom meetings. Birthday parties have gone virtual these days.
Yes.
So people are really kind of getting used to the virtual space, but to see a party convention go virtual, that was something, it took a minute to digest, but I think they did a good job integrating, lots of folks. They had perspectives from Americans, and they had a lineup of speakers. One thing that we'll get into that was kind of like a wowza was who was speaking. There were quite a few high-profile Republicans that spoke at the Democratic National Convention. Now, that was probably more of a shocker than the virtual part.
Sure, like Colin Powell was a big contributor in that.
Yeah, and former GOP Governor John Kasich spoke.
Kasich, that's right.
Yeah, it was a wide range of people, and the idea that the Democrats put forth is that there's room under the tent for everyone. The convention was modeled probably for the moderate voter. Because as we talked about last week, Republicans and Democrats don't make up the majority of the voting age population.
Correct.
Right? Only a slither, right? And together, about half. So they were pitching to a particular audience, right? But they did show that we've got others who are willing to join us on this, this thing of moving forward. So I think it was putting Biden forth as this bipartisan worker who can get things done in a tough climate. So we know that that's going to be necessary. How well that translates, because we know this week we've got something much more polarizing. It's not the all-inclusive thing. It's something that's a real hard base shove this week. So I don't know if Biden's moderate, we work together thing will be successful, but we'll soon see. We'll see how the polls start shaping up, and after this week's convention with the Republicans, we'll have a better idea.
So let me ask you, I had a show last week with a friend of mine, Ross Munaj. He is a Republican. And I had a couple of younger men on as well. They were in their mid-20s. And through that conversation, one of the statements that emerged, and apparently it was in both generations, that there are a lot of people that are closet voters for Trump. They won't admit it. They won't say, I'm a Trumpster. But they're saying, wait a minute, the economy was good, my job was flowing, we didn't have the issues. So to some degree, they were liking the tax cuts, all that stuff.
So it's always the incumbent's job to lose. I mean, and that's where we start in politics. It's the incumbent's job to lose. So it's really, Trump's in office, it was always his job to lose. And the newcomer's job to try to grasp. What we have here is those things have been usurped. The things that were going good in Trump's favor by this pandemic and the lack of attention. I mean, basically nationally, we never really had any national attention to the matter, and now we're coming up with back to school time where the kids are at home. It's funny because one of Trump's commercials, it shows all of this destruction and talks about how cities will be on fire and people will be out of work in Biden's America. And I'm looking around.
And if it's not the pot calling the kettle black.
I'm going, wait a minute. This right here is Trump's America. And it looks like folks are out of work in record numbers. Right. This pandemic has just blown up, here. And it doesn't seem any slowdown anytime soon because we've not given any concerted effort, So, I mean, I think wings of the same bird, from someone like me who kind of sits in the same position as the disenfranchised, except I do go to the polls. I go there maybe a little more jaded, or a little more wide-eyed, jaded of the process, but more wide-eyed of what the goal is in the meantime, getting the numbers up so that we have skin in the game,
right,
to be able to stand up against the corporate interests because they're pretty large. One thing that wasn't at the convention last week, and it kind of went under the radar, was one of Biden's confidants who is going to lead his transition team into the White House should he win. He came out and did an interview for the Wall Street Journal last week and basically said that, okay, even though Biden has pledged all of these trillions of dollars to buy American goods, to invest in clean energy, what the advisor said was in 2021, there won't be much money to spend because the pantries are going to be bare and we're going to have to deal with Trump's deficits. Now, austerity policies and deficit hawking, right, is what Biden was known for. That wasn't, it builds up that neoliberalism. It's all over the world. It's like they get the people to concentrate on this deficit, even though the people are the economy.
Correct.
Right? But we focus on this deficit that's out here, and we don't take care of social issues or the people that make the economy because we are focused on this deficit. And I don't know. For me, that was an alarm. And one of the progressive congressmen, AOC, I don't know, she's a member of the squad. She came out and said something about it Saturday, but it didn't get a lot of spin. Probably because we were on the heels of the Democratic National Convention. The media has their own backing and funding to support agendas.
Right.
So it didn't get much play, but that wasn't very consoling because, you know, we do have these really serious issues. I mean, crumbling infrastructure. And this is, I say it simply, the rich gets richer and the hood gets hooder, right? And the middle has been disappearing. That has been a problem my entire lifetime, right? Crumbling infrastructure. Our schools, forget not, not being able to impart the knowledge that we want for our young people to carry into adulthood and into, making productivity or being productive, right? It's all just focused on this consumerism and the corporate interest, how they're going to boost the economy, right? And it all sounds like more tax cuts for the rich so that they can do whatever it is they do for us.
Well, we started, I think, when you look at government structure, there were an elite group from the beginning. And that elite group getting smaller and smaller, and those special interests were being served through those corporations. Unfortunately, we're at a place right now where I think that the corporate animal is out of control, and they are dictating all the different things. I imagine Amazon just came out with a customized ski lift where it can pull you up the hill in a customized way. So I would say that there's lots of different things out there that corporations are going to control, that they're going to implement technological structure around, which is designed to put everybody in boxes.
That's right. Well, look at the post office. We were talking about the post office has garnered a lot of attention during this election cycle because of the slowdowns in the virus and people having to mail in ballots. Well, the argument for privatization of the post office only gets bolstered as Bezos sends up these extra satellites that we approved, right? He's going to have thousands more by 2026 as he owns
the sky. Yeah. That's right. Because essentially what will happen when those network of satellites are in place, those are communication systems, which means that now you have drones that can move around. And that's why 4K was so important for the infrastructure. And so the idea now is that you have an automated society that continues to disenfranchise those individuals that are in the labor force that used to be truck drivers and delivery service and packers and all of that.
I saw that you mentioned that. I saw an automated truck that they were testing out.
Yes.
Let me get off the road before then. You know, thank goodness I've been spending more time at home. That's terrifying.
Yeah.
That's terrifying. I mean, because we know my computer sometimes will hang up on a reboot, right? I don't want a semi-truck being controlled.
So they've been for better than a decade, maybe two, there's been automated cars, particularly in California. So they've now gotten it down to what they consider a science. It is so reliable Now, Uber is already in that game. Uber is implementing within the next couple of years a release of these automated cars. Eventually, there will be no Uber drivers. There'll be bots all over the street. They'll drive exactly the speed limit, and they will slow traffic down. You know, this morning I was going through a slalom course. Let me tell you, I'm a driver from New York. I know how to cut through traffic like a hot knife through butter. I study the psychology of getting through traffic. And from my perspective, I see people getting jammed up by those things. I don't know about the danger factor because, like today, you could be driving your car. It has those automatic brakes. You know, it stops and sensors around you, move you out of the way. It's pretty sophisticated.
Well, one thing about that, and I have been keeping up, just not as much. So you shared some knowledge with me. But the AI, right, when they were first talking about this, not recognizing Black people, I'm going to need it to work.
All right, wait, what, wait. What do you mean the AI doesn't recognize Black people?
Well, there was an initial problem with the recognition of Black people.
Okay. So we still look alike to a computer.
I just want the computer to see me if I'm on the road.
Get out of town.
I want the computer to recognize me.
I am sorry, they all still look alike. That is too funny. All right, so they got this corrected?
I'll have to get back to you because
I got to look this up.
Because you made me remember what sparked my interest in it at first, and that was what caught my eye because I was like, oh my goodness. But it's something else to contend with.
Well, if you're not going to recognize someone, and I'm not being racist, this is a general observation. A lot of a person's identity is around their eyes, obviously, and around the nose. So when I look at someone, let's say that's in the Asian, sort of genetics, that's, to me, if you're covering eyes and you're just seeing eyes, that could be more confusing. Because if you look at, let's say, Blacks, you got almond eyes, you got slanted eyes, you got everything in the panorama there. So why would we be more difficult to recognize?
I'll have to go dig deeper into that story, but it caught my eye because it just blows my mind.
Hey, look, that may not be a bad thing. Look, if I'm confusing to AI, but what's weird is that Black people also, Black skin, melanated skin, doesn't respond well to laser type procedures.
So there could be something with the technology, but there's just a frightening part of that. I mean, and this is another story, kind of goes down the rabbit trail, but it's a young man, and I can't remember exactly where he was. I'll get that, but he was arrested in his front lawn for committing a crime that or being accused of committing a crime, a robbery. And the way that they identified him was through facial recognition software and his driver's license photo.
Wow.
And I'll get the specifics about.
So he's in his own driveway getting arrested for a crime. Obviously, he didn't commit.
And his family was mortified, of course, because his family was there. They were just getting home, and he was arrested, and it took a process. Like, they didn't immediately drop the charges. There was involvement of NAACP and some others to just get the charges dropped.
Wow.
So I'll when we go on break, I'll get the information of where that was, because that was those stories catch my eye about the mishaps, because it just, because we're moving to technology in so many areas, it just kind of catches my eye.
It could be very scary.
Yeah.
Well, but what you just said hits close to home. My son, 6'2", beautiful Black man, is taking out the garbage on a Monday night. An officer happens to be passing by and literally stops right in front of my house. Where are you going? What are you doing? I'm taking out the garbage. I live here. You have any identification? I live here. Why would I have identification? Yeah. Right? It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And he literally, I told him, you got to stay calm. As frustrating as that is, that would never happen with a white kid.
Yeah.
Many of whom live in the neighborhood.
Right.
So that kind of stuff is frustrating, and I try to encourage young people to keep a calm, cool head.
Yeah.
What I've found myself, and I don't have those situations very often, but I tended to become sarcastic. And that wasn't always a good idea.
No. Yeah, no, that didn't work. It didn't work out all that well most times. But it's a real thing that Black people have to contend with in this country, and it's kind of we talked about how the corporations have globbed onto the Black Lives Matter as a movement.
Yes.
Right. But like I tell all the people all the time, there's nothing new about Black Lives Mattering to me. My grandmother was Black.
Yeah.
My great-grandmother, grandfather, my dad, my mom, all of their lives matter.
Yes.
They've always mattered.
Correct.
So, there's no hidden agenda or anything special or any type of group necessary for me to understand that and for me to live my life that way.
I think to really explain that culture, and some of our listeners might sort of have the same quandary in their mind. Why do we have to say Black Lives Matter? But let's kind of look at history for a moment. If you look back, there was in the late 1800s a science that was introduced called eugenics. Mm. And the eugenics program was predicated on this notion that because the size of the cranium and the shape of the head were different, that people of color were kind of Homo Neanderthal, mm-hmm. and that they were simians, mm-hmm. to one degree or another. Mm-hmm. So that science was perpetuated, and we have to say science in air quotes. Science is very convenient, and especially today.
Oh, of course.
So when someone tells me something is science, I'll say it's indefatigable, undeniable BS.
Yeah, right.
Because science is junk science. It depends on who's backing it along.
Right.
But the concept of eugenics essentially perpetuated this notion that blacks were monkeys. They had pygmies, they had aborigines. They brought these people over. In fact, Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus, a very racist type structure, used to bring them in all the time as the freaks, the half monkey boys, all of that. So that perpetuated this sense of inferiority, of substandardness. And unfortunately, that has continued right down to our modern day. So that if you shoot a black man in the back because he's running away from you, you got him.
Yeah.
But you sure won't shoot someone's son,
right,
who's running down the street. We're going to let him get away. Why? Because we got his driver's license, yeah, right here. We can just go ahead and issue a warrant.
Yeah.
But that's not how they think when it comes to black men.
It's not. And there was another incident this weekend in Wisconsin where young man getting in the car with his sons after breaking up a fight with two young ladies, shot in the back.
Oh my gosh.
Entering
by who?
Car.
The police officers? You got to be kidding me.
I mean, it's like you turn on the news and you see instance after instance after instance, because it's like what you said. There is a dehumanizing,
yes,
quality, yes, about the propaganda that we
exactly
are constantly fed. And talking about kind of that studies can show anything uh, message, there was one thing, talking about the DNC and Joe Biden when he was here in Houston, right? There is, and a lot of our disenfranchised are disenfranchised by the systems that are in place that
Yes.
don't necessarily take care of needs, but just fit into this structure where they can continue to compete and add more fat, right? Well, Joe Biden brought up a word study in the debate that was here in September, and I attended the debate, and it woke me up when he said this, and he said this word study that was conducted said that Black children learn 3 million less words than white children, as they're coming up.
Wow.
Right. And so I heard the word study mentioned, and the justification and where it was put is the question was asking about reparations and about attention to Black communities in this country that have declined horribly. So that was the question, the line of questioning. And the answer, instead of just saying he didn't think reparations was a good idea, right, he went to people playing record players for their children at night, reading to them because they are delinquent somehow. And then he says the answer to that is to send more social workers into homes of poor people to teach them how to raise their kids because they
that is know. Scary.
That's to me, it raised so many alarms, but people are so married to party politics and seeing things as a battle against other Americans that when you hear things that would be, something against you, you kind of put that in your bag and say, well, it's okay as long as they get them.
Right.
And it's a fail. It's a fail for all of us. So, that didn't give me all the feels from the beginning.
Not warm and fuzzy.
No.
But isn't a lot of the Democratic platform about micromanaging people's lives? The Republicans have a perspective that, hey, we're all grown-ups and, we need to take our time and learn the lessons and do what we need to do that's right for us. So it's an interesting conversation. I will tell you that this is going to be an epic battle. So folks, you are listening to Edge Radio Network here at Midtown Live. We will soon be having some live programs that we would love to have you come in as a live studio audience. This is the wonderful Miss Nicole Gray. She has done political commentary for quite a bit longer than I have, but I'm certainly enjoying the conversation. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to continue, and then at the bottom of the hour, we're going to have a special guest and a one-on-one interview. So we look forward to that. So don't go anywhere, folks. You're listening to the Edge Radio TV Network.
We work our whole lives to support our families. With one accident or illness, it can all be gone in an instant. Now there's a smart, affordable way to protect your family. Go to findhealthbenefits.com and discover low-cost life insurance for as little as $2 per month. Add to that a tax-deferred annuity that can help you protect your assets and grow your money for retirement. Learn more. Go to findhealthbenefits.com or call 877-235-6094. A critical illness can strike without warning and wipe out your life savings. In fact, it's the #1 reason for bankruptcy. Find Health Benefits offers an affordable solution. Get up to $50,000 if you get cancer, stroke, or a heart attack, giving you the peace of mind to focus on getting better while the plan helps you to pay your bills and medical expenses. Learn more. Go to findhealthbenefits.com or call 877-235-6094. 66% of seniors spend more time shopping for cable TV than Medicare plans. Most say because it's just too confusing. Laws change every year. The wrong plan could cost you thousands and prevent you from seeing the doctors you want. Introducing FindHealthBenefits.com. Save time, save money, see specialists without referrals. Go to FindHealthBenefits.com or call 877-235-6094 for this informative brochure.
Society is on the edge. Let's bring them back. Edge Radio, because truth still matters. When people stop talking to each other, society is on the edge. Let's bring them back. Edge Radio, because truth still matters.
All right, you guys, we are back. Thank you for joining us on The Morning Edge. Dearly Disenfranchised every Monday morning, 8:30 to 10 a.m. You are in the right place. And we're just talking about the wrap up of the DNC and what we can expect this week with the Republican National Convention.
Yes.
Which kicks off tonight.
Yes.
So it's all about Trump. The Republican Party has decided not to update its party platform. They are going with the same one that they had in 2016, although it is a little absurd because it talks about how the president is divisive and, countries don't fear us. But they're talking about President Obama, in 2016.
So 4 years ago, before I took office, it was that guy.
But it just still says the president, and it says this administration, and it just odd that they wouldn't at least update that part. But they released something. The RNC released something this weekend saying that they didn't release anything because they've had to change their venues and change everything due to COVID. Mm-hmm. And they're 100% behind President Trump and all that he stands for and does. So it really is a Trump convention this week because he'll be speaking every night.
Day.
Yeah. And he'll do his acceptance speech on Thursday from the South Lawn, which is unprecedented, party acceptance speeches from the White House. I mean,
it's never been done.
Yeah. No, I mean, and you're talking from a perspective of the disenfranchised or the disinterested, in the party politics. And, you kind of get the stank face and go, really?
So the Republicans are pursuing a strategy where they say, okay, we got Florida. Florida is huge. We got Texas. Texas is huge. Now we just got to get some of those swing states, Pennsylvania or Michigan. So they're going after the same exact strategy that they did before.
That's right. I mean, because they know that the president could lose by up to 5 million in the popular vote and still win through the electoral wins.
Right.
Right. And, that's the part about our political system. Another disenfranchiser. People, they're going, well, why do I need to go to the polls if the electoral college is who selects the president? And there are some candidates have talked about making changes to that process, but there's hardly ever any backing because remember, even though they have different ideologies, and they present different ideologies, there's still this underlying neoliberal framework that they're working under. So they've got these corporate interests and these corporate guys who are just saying, no, we're keeping the people right about here.
Right.
Right. And we're going to run all of this up here. We're going to do all of the interactions with the world. This is our ticket. We're your ticket to world play.
Yeah.
And that's, no matter what party you're going for.
I guess the challenge, and what you're saying is exactly right. But the challenge is that it's so insidious that it's in every part of the world. It is not an American problem.
Absolutely not.
And in fact, it's far more brazen in other parts of the world.
Right.
Because they're unapologetic. They act with impunity. They
right.
say, here's your money, shut up and sit over there. Now, this is what the rest of you are going to do for us.
That's right.
And they are promoting that consumerism. And of course, what China has done that I think is ingenious is they have inculcated their people as worker ants.
Yeah.
If you look at the Industrial Revolution, it's exactly what formal education did for the American people. It sat them in rows. It rang a bell at this time and a bell at that time. It didn't teach them about economics. It didn't teach them about entrepreneurship. What it taught them is to sit down, learn the system, and follow instructions. And we've been screwed, blued, and tattooed ever since.
That's right. No, you're absolutely right. Because if you look at either party's platform and looking at the RNC's platform, because that's where we are this week, you were saying their party seems to stand for states' rights and individuals, working their way to the top and exercising their rights freely and really giving some full faith and credit to self-governing. But in reality, right? Like I was saying, the commercials about this is going to be Biden's America, but reality, I'm living in Trump's America.
Right.
The reality is like what went on in Portland, right? Oregon could not save its citizens from that type of tyranny. We had federal officers unbadged, unnamed, in unmarked cars.
Yes. That was Gestapo stuff.
Was it not?
Yeah.
Grabbing folks up off the street.
Mm-hmm.
Now, states' rights didn't mean a whole hill of beans there.
That's correct.
Right? Because Oregon tried, went to court, right, to get a restraining order. And it wasn't to make them leave. It was to make them give notice, something that we require of all of our law enforcement, right?
Right.
Make them have probable cause for arrests, right? And that's part of our system of due process and justice.
Correct.
And so there's this thing that we've got ideology versus reality all the time. And the space that we live in as people that are a little detached, you kind of just sit back and go, you watch the ball go back and forth and you're going, what game are is any of these people playing? Because I'm living something totally different.
Yes. Yes.
But one focus of the Republican National Convention this week and it's a contrast from last week's DNC, is this convention will be focused on being more upbeat, more hopeful. Last week's convention was more of an indictment, right? It was more about what's going on wrong here. Why do we need to coalesce around these issues? And it was a highlight of the problems. This week, we're going to have a little different spin. We're going to throw our glasses on tonight. We're going to talk about the land of promise. And they've got speakers lined up that are probably the more traditional. You're going to have South Carolina Senator Tim Scott's going to be on tonight. Nikki Haley's going to be on. Donald Trump Jr. is going to be on. And like we said, the president's going to speak every night. But they're going to do the roll call tonight and formally nominate the president and vice president. But what is going to be a little different, and this is the part where, we get into these culture war kind of things. They're going to have the St. Louis couple who now faces the charges for brandishing their weapons outside of their homes, outside of their home.
Yes, and then also the young lady that was freed, that Kim Kardashian helped
she's
to
in
encourage.
The speaking
She'll
lineup.
be there.
She is in the speaking lineup, and also the kid who graduated. Oh, I don't know if he graduated, but he's a high school student, Covington High School student, where he got a judgment from media sources and their portrayal of his confrontation. And I don't think that it was a confrontation. I think that as the facts kind of wash out, there was a Native American standing in front of a high school student.
Oh, right. I remember that.
And the picture and the reports were rather insightful because it made it seem as the two were in a confrontation when reality...
It was a philosophical discussion of sorts.
I don't know if it was even a discussion between the two, because there was some kind of back and forth between the high school students and another group that was there that didn't have anything to do with the man who stepped in and was photographed with the high school student. He was just stepping in to lower the tensions between. Right.
He was diffusing the situation. But it was clever marketing. It positioned a conversation. I think to some degree, a lot of people forget how much theatrics is really involved in this process.
Absolutely.
And there's a manipulation in media where, you have lies of commission, but certainly lies of omission. And depending on which network you're watching, it can be radically different what you're hearing. And it can also be distractions like, hey, look at the little birdie over here. It's like, wait a minute, there's a major deal going on right here.
Well, take, for instance, the things that happened this past week. So you've got Joe Biden's acceptance speech. And remember, I told you about the Wall Street Journal. You've got his advisor talking about austerity policies. And that is not what he was talking about on Thursday, right? But you don't get CNN or any of those guys who are really watchdogs for him and wanting to pick up every little soundbite that he throws out. That wasn't covered. Well, likewise, if you look on the other networks, and I can't watch One American Network that much. I mean, Fox News I watch. One America Network, I've got to have wine.
You got to stay calm during this whole process.
But what I do when I watch them, in particular, I turn the volume up so that we can have a true screaming match. But if just going back to our realities and what we see, so Steve Bannon was arrested and charged last week. But Fox News, I watched it. I was watching all that day.
No mention.
I said, maybe I missed it in the ticker tape.
But it'd be interesting to get their take on what that's about. Is it a witch hunt or is it justified?
I don't know. I wrote a song. You know, I told you I'll rap it, I'll sing it. It doesn't matter.
Sure.
Now, I did a song about this before this came in, and I said, you know, we get all hyped up on these ideologies, and we all lose in the end. Steve Bannon raised a bunch of money from private citizens to build a couple miles of the wall, right? Yes. And then from there, we were all pitched to buy the second half to the tune that we took money from our military budget. So it's like, it seems, of course, it's probably business as usual.
Sure.
Right? But it's costly business as usual.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, and here we go again with the austerity policies that, you know, both pitch, right? Because there's always this mind of looking for the deficit, but when economy just means the exchange of goods or services for value, and we could both be totally enriched and never change any money and never go to a store.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So it's austerity policies, when you ignore the people, is mind-blowing, but it's just the name of the game, right?
Yeah.
So, but that was just a unique thing that I thought just in play last week. You've got, of course you don't want to put this spotlight on Steve Bannon ahead of the Republican National Convention. Of course not, right? Because he's not part of the platform. Sure. He was an associate. He did sell us a big fat, dud. I mean, but he's not the first.
Yeah.
But so his criminal matter is not the news of the convention, and you don't want it to be the news of the convention. But really noticeable was the fact that
it wasn't mentioned at all.
That it wasn't mentioned at all.
Well, I think it's about spin, and I don't think they could figure out a really good way to spin that situation.
Yeah.
Because there was so much pro-wall talk that it turned into what it did, and then it basically reduced his passion to what appears to be his opportunism, and so it really reduced it. But I'll tell you what, I see a lot of duplicity on both sides. That's my challenge.
Yeah.
And I wish that there could be a clear strategy where, you know what, if you just really tell me what you think and how you're going to improve my situation, then let me be adult enough to figure out if that's an agenda I am willing to follow.
Well, I mean, one thing that makes me go away from the hyperpartisanship, and I said, who needs Russian interference with our hyperpartisanship? It's party politicians a lot of times go for the ethos arguments because they're easier to make. You don't have to assess where anyone's knowledge base is.
Sure.
You don't have to build these logical steps to get to your end. And you don't have to do it while talking about things that aren't so appealing, like the economy or history or foreign affairs, right?
Yes.
Like I said, if you just say, do you want to kill babies? What's the answer? Hell no.
Yeah.
Right?
That's right.
Do you want to lock babies in cages?
Yeah.
Heck no. But the reality is we're doing both.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We're doing both.
Yeah.
I mean, and whether we accept that as our reality, and whether we just fish around in these ideologies and what we would like to be, I don't know. Hopefully the engagement of the disenfranchised breaks that down.
Yes.
Because we've got to.
We have to.
We've got to progress.
And we've got to start talking again and stop digging these trenches. Well, I'll tell you what, I have been enjoying this conversation tremendously, but I need to step aside.
Okay.
Because you will be having a conversation with a wonderful lady that I met a couple of weeks ago, Miss Mary Nan.
Yeah.
I should say Nan Huffman, I
That's
believe.
right.
Running for office. And you all are going to talk about that, talk about the Republican National Convention, some of the strategies. My sense is I want to get out of the way and give you a little extra time because it's going to be a great conversation. So, good. Folks, you are listening to The Morning Edge, Dearly Disenfranchised. This is the wonderful Miss Nicole Gray, Esquire. And we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll be joined with Miss Mary Nan. Back in just a moment.
All right, you guys, come on.
Between the ages of 0 and 5, a child's mind is very impressionable. Researchers call it the theta brainwave. This low frequency is the state of consciousness between the conscious and subconscious worlds. In this state, the mind is capable of deep and profound learning, healing, and growth. There is a subconscious loop that's created during these early years. Who you believe you are has been downloaded based on experiences that you have had. A bad experience could create fears and limitations. Do you love who you are? Do you believe in yourself? The reality is that you can't control your childhood. All you can do is interpret it. You can choose to see your good and your value. Try this experiment. Project forward. See yourself at 80 years old. Now you have lived a lifetime. What advice would you have for your younger self? What risks would you have taken? What relationships would you have avoided? Did you celebrate life? Did you allow yourself to feel, to be present? Your 80-year-old self would tell you to not live in fear, to have faith that things will work out, that all you have to do is persist until you succeed. Your 80-year-old self would tell you to stay healthy, to take care of your body. And it would ultimately tell you to share your gifts with the world.
This is former Rocket Robert Reed.
This is Mel Jewell of Athletes United.
And we want to talk to you of our new program and podcast. We're talking about former athletes who are doing a lot of things in the community.
Various athletes in various sports. Swimming, track, soccer, football, baseball, you name it.
Former and current athletes here in the greater Houston area.
All promoting wellness, health. All promoting that which makes us all better.
Of Edge Radio, truth still matters.
Welcome back, you guys, to Dearly Disenfranchised on the Morning Edge. Every Monday, 8:30 to 10 o'clock, we have a really special guest for our last segment, Miss Mary Nan Huffman for Harris County District Attorney.
Yes.
Right? Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Well, you were so gracious to join us. I reached out and you got back with me right away, and that's really refreshing because for regular people, when we think about politics, we're far removed, right? But if you can reach out and get a response, that makes you feel connected. So I really appreciate how swift your office was in getting back with us. So welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. We were just talking about what to expect this week from the Republican National Convention, and you are running on the Republican ticket.
I am.
And so that's why you're our special guest for this week, because we just want all of our listeners to just be engaged in the process. You know, you've got to know what everyone is presenting in order to make an informed choice. Riding waves of any kind is really kind of terrifying, if you ask me, right? So the more people that we can get in to just talk about what their platform is, their own individual platform. Where do you stand? What is it that you want to bring to Harris County District Attorney's Office, and not just, you know, all that little fluffy stuff, right? So let's just kind of dig in there, right? What brought you to running for district attorney in Harris County?
Well, I'm Mary Nan Huffman. I'm running for Harris County District Attorney because everybody deserves to live in a safe place. And over the last 4 years, our crime rate is up in Harris County. Our murders have doubled. Our domestic violence cases are up 36%. Our violent crimes are up 17%. And, you know, I never wanted to run for public office. I'm a mom and I have 2 boys and I want them to grow up in a safe place. And so that's when I kind of started thinking about the idea. I was a prosecutor for 10 years. When I left the DA's office, I was the chief of child exploitation, internet crimes against children, child human trafficking. Working those cases were kind of my passion. Currently, I'm an attorney for the Houston Police Officers Union. And you know, Montgomery County is just right north of Harris County. Okay. But in Montgomery County, law enforcement is excited to bring their cases to the DA's office, and we collaborate. And it was great working with law enforcement there. Now, I knew it wasn't going to be quite the same working with HPD in Harris County, but I didn't really realize how bad morale was until I started working for the police department. I go out on a lot of scenes, and you have these guys that are on bond for 3 different aggravated robberies, then carjacking a mom who's in the drive-thru trying to get her kids dinner. And the police officers are like, well, you know, we caught him again, but the DA's office isn't going to do anything about it. And so that's when I started thinking about, well, you know, maybe there's something that I can do. I also think, you know, we're not giving criminals enough credit. One of the last cases I worked in Montgomery County, there was a mom who she was going to put her 2-year-old daughter on a Greyhound bus from Houston to Conroe and sell her for $1,200 for about 2 hours of sex with this man. Well, the man ended up being one of the undercover officers that I was working with. And so we had surveillance set up in downtown Houston. We had surveillance up in Conroe. But before she put that little girl on the bus, she said, hey, you think we should just stay in Harris County? Because that DA up there, he doesn't like people like us. And for me, that was pretty eye-opening because this wasn't the crime that bothered her. It was the jurisdiction. You know, she knew that if she stayed in Harris County and got caught, she wouldn't get in any trouble. And I'm thinking, no, but this is where I live. This is where my kids are. You know, I want you to go somewhere else to commit your crimes. And Harris County's headed in a bad direction.
Well, I mean, and what you're saying with those statistics that you presented, I mean, that's awful. It makes you just go, wow, of course I don't want my kids to grow up in a place that's so crime ridden. But our reality, you know, and when we see things, I and of course child trafficking and all of that happens in the dark, and criminals are going to be criminals and find their way to do criminal things. But it's just when we see this reality, how do you get people to know that those statistics exist? Because I don't fear leaving out of my home, just to be honest. When I go out, I mean, I know that crime exists, but my neighborhood isn't, just jumping with criminals. And the rate there isn't really high. And I go to my friend's house, I go to my parents' house, and I don't feel, in bondage thinking about what criminals are doing. But how do you bring that to people's attention that this is really what's going on?
Well, I think that you're then extremely really lucky, because I feel like a lot of people in Harris County, I mean, if you lived here for any amount of time, you have been a victim of a violent crime.
Oh, 42 years, never been a victim of a violent crime, thank God.
That's amazing. I mean, that really is. I've been in Harris County now for 12 years. I've lived in 2 different houses. I've been broken into 3 different times. And every time it happens, you feel violated. And you want to go somewhere else. You want to go somewhere that you can be safe. And so you are very lucky that nothing like that's ever happened to you. But I think the general public has seen crime get progressively worse over the last 4 years since Kim Ogg took office.
Well, I hope so, because I don't know. I hope so, and I hope my audience, and they can chime in, and I hope that that's something that people can see, because honestly, hearing the statistics, I didn't know that, and I try to stay in tune, but because that wasn't on my radar, because I've been blessed to not be a victim of a violent crime. And I'm sure if I were, that would be more on my radar.
Absolutely.
But it's just, I'm glad that you explained those statistics, because it really does drive home what the needs are here. Now, there is one thing that had caught my attention about Kim Ogg's DA's office that I do like, that I wanted to ask you about, and this is diversion programs, right? They've got the diversion programs, and they're working with HPD and Harris County Sheriff's Office, and I think those are good for making sure that the mentally ill are not met by HPD if they're not able to handle those things, and they don't go to jail if they need to go to treatment. Right?
Absolutely.
So what do you think about diversion programs? Are you going to try to continue some of those things in your office?
I will absolutely continue diversion programs. I think that they are a great thing. I 100% believe in second chances. We are all human beings, and we all make mistakes. And so the diversion programs are working great, but that's not really our problem in Harris County. These low-level offenses where there are no victims, I was telling somebody this morning that Harris County is like a flooded house. And when your house floods, you don't go in and start touching up the paint, right? You go in and you remediate and you rip out the sheetrock and you take care of the big stuff first. And our big problems are the gangs, the human trafficking, the cartel. And so those are where we need to put our resources.
Okay. So we'll continue the diversion programs, but the low-level offenders aren't the problem. It's the cartels and the gangs. I just hope my reality isn't just so far off, because I know that the cartels and the gangs are a big problem in our area. It's just for the average person that's walking around. I'm not thinking about the cartels in my day-to-day life, right? But I am thinking about my cousin who has a mental illness, or so I guess people's big issues are relative.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. And I think, an example of that, on May 16th this year, Rosalie Cook, she's 80 years old, 5 feet tall, never hurt anybody. She's coming out of Walgreens in the middle of a pandemic, 10 a.m., broad daylight, and she's stabbed to death by a total stranger, someone she'd never met before. Now, that day before she met Randy Lewis, the man who committed that crime, he had already been arrested 67 times. His last arrest was for assaulting a police officer. And I think every time he commits a violent crime like that, he's telling the DA's office, he's telling society, don't put me out there.
Yeah,
I
right.
can't follow the rules.
Absolutely
I'm going to hurt somebody else.
Yeah.
But the DA's office looked at his history, looked at how many times he'd been arrested, and agreed to release him on $0. He paid $0.
Yeah.
And 7 days later met Rosalie Cook, and she was the victim.
Yeah. When we had all of these releases for the pandemic, that was a pretty scary time for most of us because, we knew that the jails would be a breeding ground for the virus just because of the low sanitation, the close quarters, and all of that. We knew that we had to have some compassionate release, but I was really taken aback by some of the histories of the guys who were released. $10, $0, and of course, what they were used to is what they would return to. I don't think that anybody with the right mind would think that they would come out just because there was a pandemic and they would change their lives. So that was a really scary time. And I think, people do have some really big issues on their minds right now as it deals with our criminal justice and our law enforcement. And, for the most part, one thing that I've noticed here in our city, though, and that I'm grateful for, is that we don't have this combustible, kind of place where, like we saw in Minneapolis, where Senator Klobuchar about left it to burn and about lit the whole country on fire. We don't have that type of combustible relationship here in Houston, and that kind of tug of war between the citizens and the DA's office and the police department. But what we did have here was 60,000 people who gathered for equal justice. So how do we address those 60,000 people who are demanding equal justice in your platform? How does your platform accommodate that demand?
I think that, like you said, Houston, Harris County is a great place, and we didn't have that. However, I think we have the trickle down of that. And when we see law enforcement officers commit crimes like we did in Minneapolis, it erodes the public's faith in the criminal justice system. And people do. They speak out. They want transparency. They want accountability. And that's great. We need that, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, we all want to live in a safe place. And we want all people to be held accountable no matter what. I don't care if you're wearing a badge or sitting on commissioner's court. If you break the law, you should be held accountable just like anyone else. Because I was a prosecutor for 10 years and now I do work for the Houston Police Officers Union, I've seen both sides of it. Mm-hmm. And I think I can be that bridge to bridge the community with law enforcement. I think more than ever we need to come together. The DA and law enforcement, they're not on the same team, but they are allies. Mm-hmm. We need each other to work together to make this a better, safer place. We need prosecutors to double check the police officers' work to make sure, okay, did you do everything right here? Did you collect evidence properly? Did you violate anybody's rights? Yeah. And it's a checks and balance. And when you do see something wrong, that's a teaching moment. Most of these police officers that I've worked with, nobody becomes a police officer because they want to wear a body cam 24/7 or, they want to be shot at or they want to miss every anniversary and every birthday with their family. They do it because it's a calling and they love to do it and they don't want to do a bad job. So when us as lawyers see things that police officers could do better, let's take that as a training moment and educate them to make these cases better and stronger.
And I agree with you there. The lines of communication have to be open. There has to be more collaboration. We have to work together for common goals like safety and just living in a place that's everyone has an equal opportunity. Everyone has, due process.
Right. The criminal justice system can treat everyone fairly.
Yeah.
If we let it.
Yeah. And it requires us putting full faith and credit in our self-governing experiment and not allowing other people to do our dirty work, right? And I say that meaning meet our needs at the expense of others, right? Because if it's a safe place, it has to be a safe place for everyone. It can't be a safe place for this person at the expense of someone else's safety. So I think Houston is a great place, and I really appreciate your answer for that, and I'm sure everyone does too, because that's a large number that we saw here, and it wasn't like what we saw in other cities. Other cities we saw eruptions, and I'm sure it has a lot to do with the relationship that exists in those in those places between the citizens and their police departments and their DA's office, because Minneapolis was woo, and grateful that that is not here. But we saw it erupt because the relationship was so bad.
Right.
And
I think the relationship with law enforcement in the community in Harris County is better than other places. But I don't think that law enforcement feels supported by the current administration at the DA's office right now. The DA right now would tell you that crime rates are down. Well, they're not accepting as many charges as they used to. Corona has somewhat to do with it, but even before coronavirus happened, less charges were being accepted at the DA's office. And so you do have these officers that are out there, they're putting in the hard work, and they're arresting the same people over and over again. I was talking to a deputy the other day, and she said she arrested the same guy 9 times in 12 months. And the last time she arrested him, because he kept getting out, she was trying to buckle him into the back of her patrol car, and he headbutted her so hard into the cage of her patrol car that she has brain damage. She's had to have multiple surgeries, and now she's had to medically retire.
So why is it that we don't know about this? And honestly, because I'm so in tune with what goes on in my community in particular, why aren't officers talking to us about these things? Because here's the thing, I'm upset about that, right?
Yes.
And I'm sure others would be upset about that mistreatment. But we need to know that. That's what I was saying about the collaboration. There has got to be more conversation, more collaboration, because sure, that's upsetting.
But I don't think that we're hearing it from the media, right? That would be an outlet for all people in Harris County to hear about these things, but it doesn't really fit the rhetoric right now. And right now I feel like even Kim Ogg, is trying to capitalize on this anti-cop movement right now. And, she's claiming in her last campaign piece she sent out, she said, I'm holding police officers accountable after decades of unaccountability. And she talked about how she indicted 5 police officers for gambling. But what she's not telling you is that HPD did that investigation. They collected the evidence. They did the investigation on their own department and then turned it over to the DA's office. So it's not like something that she uncovered or that she has this investigative team exposing. These police agencies are doing the right thing. They're doing these investigations when it's necessary, and then they're turning it over to the DA's office to be prosecuted.
So really, I have to go back. An anti-cop movement. I hate that a Black Lives Matter movement has turned into an anti-cop movement. To be honest, I don't know anyone who believes that Black Lives Matter because we're just Black people and our lives matter, that we feel anti-cop. We've got family members that are cops. And normally the people that I'm around and the people who really feel strongly about not even a movement, right? Because like I said, my grandparents, Black people, they've always mattered.
Sure.
There's no movement other than saying, extrajudicial killings are happening, to a particular people. And so, hello, we matter too, right?
Right.
But this notion that there is an anti-cop movement when accountability in police forces should just be a thing.
Yes, it should just be a thing.
Extrajudicial killing should not be a thing,
right?
Because we've got due process, right? So it's like an anti-cop movement. I hate that that's the way that it's framed, or that it's even the way that it's thought of, because it's just extrajudicial killing should not happen. Right?
Yes.
Black lives, white lives, Asian lives, all lives, extrajudicial killing should not happen. Due process should happen for everyone, right? So is how that is anti-cop, I don't get it. I never really understood that. And we're getting into the weeds, and I don't want to get into the weeds because that's not what you're here for. You're here to talk about your campaign, which you've done so beautifully, and you've brought to bear what we need to be considering when we're thinking about our DA's office and our safety going forward. So just before we end, I want to just kind of bring back the rally a little bit, because we know that party politics does rule our days, right? And even though many are disengaged, that is just the way things go, you know. So this week we've got the Republican National Convention, right? We've got President Trump speaking every night. We've got the roll call that's happening tonight. And I mentioned in our first segment that it's a bit of a departure from last week, which was more of an indictment, more of what's going on, what's wrong, what's not been happening. I'm just going to look
doom and gloom last week.
It was a bit of doom and gloom, but we are in some trying times, so I could understand some of the sentiments, but everything is for parties' sakes, right? Yes. To rally the bases but
that's the great thing about the DA's office position. It isn't Republican or Democrat.
Right.
Public safety should be the one thing the government provides for its people. And it doesn't matter if we have these beautiful churches or parks. Nobody wants to go there if they don't feel safe. Like I said, I've had 2 different houses broken into 3 different times. And not once did they ask me who I voted for before they robbed me.
But and the thing about it is we've got 2 hurricanes barreling our way. And when we're going to save our properties and our neighbors, we're not asking any of these silly questions.
Right.
No one ever cares. But the reality is that that's where we live, and our national politics does shape our criminal justice and law enforcement, just like anti-cop movement, but it's a culture war, and that's absolutely not the case. That's not reality.
Right.
That's politics.
Right.
But today we've got Land of Promise. Tomorrow we've got Land of Opportunity. Wednesday's theme is Land of Heroes, and Thursday's is Land of Greatness. Right? So we're getting ready to just get all the feels, get rallied up for going to the polls and making sure our voices are heard.
Absolutely.
Because that people power is what moves the needle. It doesn't matter what your ideologies are. We all got to show up to the polls. The more that we show up to the polls, the less our government can run on its own.
Absolutely. And Governor Abbott has opened up an extra week of early voting.
Absolutely. Very good.
And so that way we can space out the lines. Our polling locations are going to be safe. They're going to be clean. They're going to take all the necessary precautions, so people shouldn't be afraid.
And I voted when was it? A couple months ago?
In the
runoff. And I felt very safe.
I did too.
Yeah. Did you go in?
I did.
Yeah, me too.
Yes.
So I felt like they were taking some really good precautions with the finger condom.
Yeah. But, we have the longest ballot in the country.
Yeah.
And this will be the first election where there's no straight ticket voting. You have to go in. And I hope that people of Harris County will take a look at the actual candidates instead of just the letters next to each person's name and decide who can help us, who can change what's been happening around here. We have some of these leaders that have been, leaders for years, and we're still in the exact same positions.
Absolutely. My favorite thing is rich gets richer, hood gets hooder, middle disappears. But we'll work on that as people. You guys join us again next Monday. We had our very special guest, Mary Nan Huffman. She's running for Harris County District Attorney. Go check out her website. Follow her on our campaign trail. And of course, join us next Monday for Dearly Disenfranchised on Edge Radio TV Network. I got my hips out and I'm